Another day, another economic disaster provoked by the reckless rhetoric and the policies of the new administration. And that is our headline this Wednesday night, day number 65 of the greatest and costliest expansion of government in world history, Obama's global panic. Now, the world is already on edge ahead of next week's G20 summit. Europe is bleeding, as evidenced by the speech of this British politician who once supported President Obama. Now, take a look at the public beating that he gave Prime Minister Gordon Brown, whose government is behaving in ways awfully similar to our very own.
Perhaps you would have more legitimacy in the councils of the world if the United Kingdom were not going into this recession in the worst condition of any G20 country. The truth, Prime Minister, is that you have run out of our money. Now, once again today you try to spread the blame around. You spoke about an international recession, international crisis. Well, it is true that we are all sailing together into the squalls. But not every vessel in the convoy is in the same dilapidated condition. Other ships used the good years to caulk their hulls and clear their rigging, in other words, to pay off debt. But you used the good years to raise borrowing yet further. As a consequence, under your captaincy, our hull is pressed deep into the waterline under the accumulated weight of your debt. It's not that you're not apologising. Like everyone else, I've long accepted that you're pathologically incapable of accepting responsibility for these things. It's that you're carrying on, willfully worsening our situation, wantonly spending what little we have left.
Now, very well said. Now, the global crisis was made worse this morning by none other than TurboTax chief Tim Geithner, who had this to say while speaking to the Council of Foreign Relations.
But as I understand this proposal, it's a proposal designed to increase the use of the IMF's special drawing rights. We're actually quite open to that suggestion.
Now, as a result of the Secretary's reckless comments about the Chinese proposal to remake the international monetary system, the dollar plunged at least 1.3% against the euro within 10 short minutes. And joining me tonight is former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor, host of the documentary Ronald Reagan, Rendezvous with Destiny, Newt Gingrich is with us. Mr. Speaker, good to see you.
Great to be with you.
All right, first, let's go to Tax Chief Tim Geithner's comments. I find this amazing that, he actually said that the idea that we could have, agreeing with what China suggested, that it deserves some consideration, a global currency, it results in a massive, massive decline in the dollar on the markets in 10 minutes. Does he deserve to be fired?
I don't remember. Look, first of all, I've said for weeks that Geithner should be fired. I think that as long as he's Secretary of the Treasury, he and Chris Dodd and Barney Frank are three of the greatest obstacles to economic recovery that we have. The idea that a U.S. Secretary of the Treasury could be that casual, either that ignorant or that uninformed about the role of the U.S. dollar in the world system is a little bit frightening, frankly, and I think the immediate reaction of the world market told you how unnerving it was to have him casually suggest that we could have some very strange artificial currency, special drawing rights at the International Monetary Fund, somehow replace the dollar. I thought it was remarkably destructive.
I agree with that. All right, I want to get into, and I think all of the media is ignoring this, and the fact that he got a pass last night during this press conference is very, very troubling to me. And very specifically, I think this moves America down the road to socialism, the biggest power grab. They have asked for, in just the last week, the Obama administration, the right to limit executive pay, even for companies that are not getting a bailout. They saw it yesterday. We saw in I believe it was the Washington Post, they're actually seeking the right to seize firms. They want to use the reconciliation process to pass their health care bill and cap and trade, which would eliminate the need for Republican votes in the historical sense, and even some Democrats are opposing. Can you explain to our audience how dangerous this power grab is?
Sure. Look, I think if you read Jonah Goldberg's book on liberal fascism, and you read the chapter on what a liberal fascist economics would be like, it's frighteningly prescient. I think you ought to, reissue it as sort of an introductory guide to how the left is thinking this year. We are seeing the biggest power grab by politicians in American history. The idea that they would propose that the Treasury could intervene and take over non-bank, non-financial system assets gives them the potential to basically create the equivalent of a dictatorship. You don't want to do what they want, they take over your company. You do what they want, Congress retroactively, and this is what made last week's lynch mob like a third world government, when the Congress literally got out of control, panicked because people were mad at it, and it turned out that the Congress had passed the authorization in the stimulus bill for AIG to pay those bonuses. The Congress had approved it. The people at AIG were acting what they thought was the rules set by the government. Suddenly, they're being attacked. They are retroactively losing their money. Why would anybody want to invest in a country where Barney Frank and Chris Dodd can go back and retroactively take money away from them?
So if we put all these things together, that they control executive pay, that they can take over firms, retroactively tax people or target individuals as they did, you use the term dictatorship. That moves America towards a dictatorship?
Sure. Look, it absolutely moves you towards a political dictatorship. The Constitution specifically prohibits the kind of bill that they passed in the House last week to go back retroactively and confiscate 90% of the money that was being paid to AIG employees under a provision which the Congress itself had passed a month ago. I mean, I think people need to look carefully at what despicable behavior this is.
Well, I agree, and I think it was ignored, and that brings me back to last night's press conference. He was not asked a lot of the tough questions. You know, he wasn't asked specifically or challenged in a hard way that I think any Republican president would have been. You know, he actually made some pretty remarkable statements last night, you know, by saying that we're going to have economic growth by moving from an era of borrow and spend to one where it's save and invest, with a $10 trillion debt and deficit. He said, I'm as angry as anybody about AIG, and it was their requested provision to the Dodd Amendment that allowed it to happen. Now, I find those statements not only dishonest, but remarkable that they're not challenged. Do you see the...
Well, I think it's... Yeah, look, I think it's very remarkable. First of all, I think we're learning that President Obama uses whatever words he wants to say whatever he thinks you need to hear, and it has no bearing in fact and no basis in reality. And I frankly don't find paying attention to his words very helpful, because they don't tell me anything that's real. Second, I think we're learning that the news media, for some reason, isn't following up. I mean, last night they should have said to him, how can you possibly tell us we're going to leave an era of borrow and spend when you are proposing to triple the U.S. debt over the next 10 years?
All right, last question.
The total U.S. debt.
Yeah, well, and more than any other president from Washington up to and including George W. Bush. So, I mean, that is the incredible story.
And by the way...
Go ahead.
No, people need to realize, in the House and Senate, the Democrats know they cannot print a 10-year budget. And so it's a little bit like telling you you're going to buy a house, and they're only going to tell you what the first 5 years of the mortgage are and not tell you about the next 25 years. They are literally refusing to print how much they're going to borrow over a 10-year period.
All right, Mr. Speaker, thanks for being with us. And by the way, I love the DVD, and thank you for sending me that copy. And for those that love Reagan as I do, it is very well done. Appreciate you being with us.
Thank you.
And coming up, ever wonder who the mastermind behind the Democrats' strategy was to attack Rush Limbaugh? Well, he is Clinton pollster and the partner of James Carville. Stanley Greenberg is here, and we'll shoot it out coming up next. And if the countrywide shenanigans and the AIG bailouts weren't enough, well, we've got even more news about poor, scandal-ridden Chris Dodd, or as the New Haven Register calls him, the lying weasel. Straight ahead.